When I was a kid, one of my dreams was to work at NASA, and go to space and become an astronaut. And it was so difficult, everything I read in magazines, and I had this star map and those galaxies and the whole space mapped out. And I wanted to buy a telescope and I tried to study astrophysics and all this, but it was everything so complicated and so hard to achieve. And, the only place you can go when you want to go to space back then was with NASA, that there was no other institution that could help us out. Well, everything changed in the last 2 weeks, and we're going to deep dive on it in this new summary for the business and tech world. Welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed this analysis. A few weeks ago, we saw this guy saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to be the first billionaire to go out to space. And suddenly, this guy said, no, you won't. I will. So that's how crazy those guys get, how big they are. But there are a few learnings that we can take out from this new space age or this new space run that we are doing, this new exploration from space. And it has nothing to do with colonies on Mars. Don't get stuck on this Twitter stuff from Elon Musk. There's nothing to do with it for now, maybe in the future, but for now, there's nothing to do with colonies on Mars. It has everything to do with more access to the internet. That's the primary goal of this new space age that we're living in. And it's quite cool. I found those guys in the internet called Space Capital. It's a venture capital firm dedicated to the space economy. And they do some like crazy and awesome analysis about this market. And the first thing that grabbed my attention is that the GPS economy right now has an equity value of over $400 billion, and those guys, they divide the innovation from space economy into three parts: the application, the distribution, how we get the data, and the infrastructure, the hardware in space giving us insight and data. There wouldn't be many applications that we use nowadays if it wasn't for the GPS, just like Pokemon Go or DoorDash for delivery or Flipkart for delivery in India and all this. So many of those companies, I don't know, Grab in Singapore and Uber in the US and all over the world. So there's a lot of applications that we use right now that has GPS as an underlying technology. And I would put GPS as a technology as important as the internet, since one is empowering the other nowadays, right? And we basically cannot live without either. So it's really powerful stuff when we think that the space economy has already changed our life so much, and sometimes we don't realize that. So that's a really powerful industry sector for us to analyze, and to dive deeper. But there are two other applications. But there are two other sectors getting birth on this space economy that we need to pay attention, and one of them is really interesting for Miss Jeff Bezos over here. The first one is geointelligence, and is the fact that you go to space to capture data out from the Earth, right? So you have like ISI, who sends a constellation of satellites called synthetic aperture radar, so it can scan and map the land, the water, and all this. It has a huge application towards agriculture, towards mining, and all those different sectors can be impacted by the geointelligence. According to Space Capital, is a sector inside the space economy north of $400 billion in equity value. And the second one is communications, where you already have like the satellite TV, satellite radio. You have this new deploy of the Starlink constellation of satellites from SpaceX. And here we're talking mainly about the deployment of internet from outer space, so we can cover more of the earth. Because think about it, right now we have half the population getting access to the internet. We have 4 billion people connected to the internet. It's getting harder and harder with the technologies that we have to deploy high-speed internet out from the earth. 5G has a reduced range, so you need to deploy more and more antennas, and that becomes more and more expensive. So the real motivation for this new space age is actually deploying the internet from outer space. This is a huge economy predicted from those space capital guys of north of $800 billion. So we're talking about a new industry coming along that's worth north of $1 trillion. Okay, so this is really powerful stuff. Now think about it. Right now we have 4 billion people connected to the internet, and this guy have revenue of north of $400 billion a year, and he has, I don't know, 100 or 200 million subscriber of Prime. Can you imagine if we double the internet size? This guy can like double his revenue, double his subscribers on Prime, and all this. So that's it. The essential motivation of this new space age is all about giving us more internet for now. Maybe in the future will be colonies on Mars and all this blah 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 stuff they're talking about. But right now it's all about the deploy of internet to a broader audience to cover more places of the Earth. Okay, and it's really powerful. When we see the growth of this space economy industry, as you can see in this chart from Space Capital, we're experiencing a massive exponential growth in this industry. We have over 700 companies that work in this industry. And what is more interesting that this guys brought is that this is the sector of the economy that brings the most return for their early investors. And in their study, the last 25 exits generated an average of 690 times the investment. Can you imagine that? If an early investor poured $1 million into one of these companies, he got back $690 million. That's crazy, right? And if you don't know, exit is when a company is either acquired, merged, or gets their IPO. So the investor basically get their money back, right? And as you can see, this is an underlying technology. This is what we call hard science. So the GPS industry is a very powerful technology, an underlying technology that has transformed our lives. There will be no Uber, no Lyft, no Snapchat, no Tinder, no many other solutions that we use right now that wouldn't be able to exist if it wasn't for the GPS. And it's quite interesting that in one of those their reports, they bring back a phrase from Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs is really awesome. He was more than a CEO, he was a futurist. When they launched the iPhone 2.0 software, he said, those location services is going to be really big, and he predicted the future. Location services now drive the iPhone economy. It's really crazy stuff, and what I like a lot from this guy from Space Capital, they built this dashboard to follow this space economy industry and their investments. So you can see here is a real time dashboard. So you can choose the quarter you want to analyze. You can choose the year and the range of years. See this is 2021. We're already experienced $15 billion investment in this area in 216 different companies. You can analyze it by the different verticals that they talk about, the applications, infrastructure, and distribution. You can see it by country. As you can see, United States detains half of all the investments since they started to analyze this on the space industry. And it's quite amazing that the US has a lot of investment in the application, but also in infrastructure. And when you see China, that is the second largest investor in this area, and has like a fourth of all the investments in this economy, we see that China invests much more on applications than in infrastructure. And that's kind of like the opposite way that they did with their industrialization. They invested a lot in infrastructure for industrialization, and they became the world's global factory. And right now they're doing the opposite. So that's a little bit strange, because the ones who detain the infrastructure, they have a larger bargain power with other countries, right? So it's quite interesting to see this movement in China, and we need to explore a little bit more. But there's a second point that I think is even more powerful than this one, and the interest that this economy might bring to us, and is the fact that we are no longer needing NASA or the governments to push for a space age. We're looking at individuals, people, billionaires pushing this new era. And this has everything to do with the democratization power of digital. Because right now, to go out to space, everything we do is digital. You know, all the dashboards and all the tools used in both rockets were all digital empowered. The way we built those rockets were all digitally empowered. And we see digital democratizing every industry. We have Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies democratizing the access to the financial system. We see fintechs democratizing access to banking system. We see the iPhone and the smartphone revolution democratizing access to the internet and to several other services. So digital has everything to do with democratization. And now we're seeing the democratization of the space. Can you imagine that? It's really crazy. And what's even more interesting is that we're coming out of this government pushed movement towards a more consumer driven movement. And it's quite interesting. We see now blogs like Everyday Astronaut. Can you imagine this name of a blog with over 280,000 monthly visits? That's crazy. These guys have a YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers. Can you see the impact that we have? This is a new revolution coming, and sometimes we're taking it for granted. You know, or it's just billionaires going out to space. No, we have over 57 startups mapped by CB Insights in this industry, and more important than that the democratization of digital just got into the space age, and that's crazy. And the more digital democratizes everything, the less important the institutions become. And that's the most powerful insight of this summary. I hope you enjoyed, and I see you next Friday for the next episode.